And now a brief look at what is actually misbehavior. And so, well, actually misbehavior is reported as a significant problem in schools and a significant reason for low teacher retention. Statistics show that since 1968, it's been reported as the most important problem that teachers face by teachers and the third most important problem by the public. What behaviors would you consider worth responding to as a teacher? For example, would you say a pupil fiddling with a piece of wax while listening to the teacher's presentation is a misbehavior? Answering back to the teacher, taking more time than the rest of the class to engage in a task or to move to the next task. So I guess it's just acknowledging that, you know, sometimes it really helps pupils to fiddle with something, or they don't mean to answer back in it, they don't mean it to be in a rude way, they're actually maybe engaging, and so on. To determine if a behavior is worth responding to, it might be helpful to take a few things into consideration. We can consider and challenge our own expectations. Where do they come from? Are they our own experiences, our own expectations? Sometimes you might feel like it might be the case that there's you can ask yourself rather, is there a need for me to be seen in control? And I guess maybe this is, if you're a new teacher or less experienced, you might worry about what colleagues think of you. So all behavior, like we heard earlier, is a communication or behaves badly just for the sake of it. And another thing to take into consideration is the specific child's development, abilities, difficulties, and needs. And a definition of misbehavior is any behavior that disrupts a pupil's own learning or that of other pupils in the classroom. So I would say, if I know a certain child in my class just really finds it hard to stand still or sit still, if they need to move and be in a position that's not really what I'm expecting, if they're not disrupting anyone else from taking part in the lesson, we might just have to look past it. So I'm carrying on. So our actions have a profound effect on the children. A climate of fear can handicap all of the goals of higher learning. Children have to have faith that the teachers don't dislike them and don't misunderstand them. Just as you don't make a big fuss about the people who are very good at maths because it makes the others feel inadequate, you don't do the same thing with behavior. And another very interesting thing is Jacob Koonin points out in his book, Discipline and Group Management in Classrooms, that whatever you do as a teacher, if you tell one child off, there is what he calls a ripple effect. As in, when you tell off one child, it affects all children in the class, and sometimes it affects the really quiet and well-behaved children the most. You can see the tension and stress levels going up for the whole class, not just for the child you're speaking to. That's a very important point to bear in mind. And to come back to sort of where we started, another quote from Alfie Kohn. If I offered you $1,000 to take off your shoes, you'd very likely accept, and then I could triumphantly announce that rewards work. But as with punishments, they can never help someone develop a commitment to a task or action, a reason to keep doing it when there's no longer a payoff. And I guess it's like this with anything, you know, we can tell children off for being nasty to another child, but unless we do it in a certain way, they will just, well, they will stop while I'm there, but as soon as I turn my back to them, they will probably most likely carry on. This brings me to the end of my talk, and I will stop screen sharing, and we have a little bit of time for questions or sharing. in case anyone if anyone else would like to add something that they feel is important.
Good. You mentioned that you were putting this into practice with your old class 6-7. How did that go? You said you're gonna, expand on it at the end a little bit.
Well, what I did with them is well, as part of the master's thesis, it was a kind of a research project, so I had to do some actual research. So I did that with my pupils, and it was to follow a certain method of testing their intrinsic motivation, how it is when they are given a reward. The thing I did was to actually sort of through discussion groups identify what kind of rewards they find most appealing and which rewards they wouldn't really care about. And that in itself was kind of quite interesting. I did then sort of give questionnaires to them to rate which ones they would rate highest. And then I did the same to all the teachers who teach the class to see what they think the pupils rate the highest, and then compared, as in basically checking how well do the teachers know what pupils value in terms of getting certain rewards. If you want, I can share with you what they were in particular. Being given no homework was pretty high on the list as a reward for something, for example. And to have a free choice time, no homework, or a shorter school day was one of the first three most favorite rewards. If they were to choose rewards, it's not as if they get given these rewards, but it was just an interesting exercise to do. And so the rewards they did not appreciate were things like points for things, or a certificate or medal, being called head boy or head girl, or being they specifically not looking in public. Maybe not surprising, seeing they were in age, I guess. And in terms of teachers ranking of pupils like it was fairly. And then as a second part of this research, it was we had a control group and a experimental group, and they did 2 times 3 sessions. So the first three sessions were maths lessons basically, but one group was told the first session was just a session, and I would record their on-task time in a 5-minute slot in the middle of a lesson. So they would have a lesson, and then 5 minutes in the middle, they would be allowed to choose to do whatever they wanted. They could stop the work, but stay in their place and do something else. And so they had 3 sessions where they have this middle bit where they could do the task or not. And in the second session, the experimental group would be given the reward. So they were told at the beginning, if you work really hard and you get this done and so on, then you will have no homework today, because that was their top favorite reward. And the control group, they were told something else. They were taken out of the room, told something else, nothing to do with this. So they both thought they were told something. They came back, and then it was compared, between control group and research group, but then also the third session, then looking at how are they then behaving third time round when they're again not given a reward. So does it then mean because they are no longer being rewarded, are they losing interest, or are they not? And in terms of the sessions, the first 3 sessions were math sessions, and I don't know how much detail you want to know, but it varied slightly. There was on the whole, I mean, I also asked them kind of how much they enjoyed each activity, each session. So you could get an idea of how much they enjoyed what they were doing, and you could then get a number of minutes out of the 5 that they were on task or not. So you had the numbers there to see how I mean, this is research, isn't it? You can find loads of faults with it, I'm sure. But according to how many minutes they were on else, you can measure how intrinsically motivated they were and compare it also with the 3rd session. And then I did the same with 3 perspective drawing sessions. And there it was very interesting because both groups, reward group, well, experimental group and control group, worked through the 5 minutes every single time. So whether they were given a reward or not, which I think kind of interestingly proves that, you know, when they are intrinsically motivated, when they like the task they're doing, it doesn't matter at all whether you give them something at the end of it or not, or whether they know they are going to get something or not. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough of an answer for you. I mean, it was a small scale research project that one would not be able to make any major conclusions from. I think, you know, in terms of doing an MA, that you have to go through the motions of doing everything to do with doing a small research project and so on. One could find many points one could argue in different directions about it, I imagine.
And the phrase I can very much relate to. I mean, the way you describe. I mean, I think that's great. But let's say in a school environment, and especially if there is a child who is disrupting the rest of the work of the other pupils, kind of the discipline, when you kind of break discipline or a certain work atmosphere, that's kind of in real life is foggy to me, like how you can actually achieve that with the described method. Sorry, my sound is cold.
I'm not sure I understood everything. Are you saying how do you achieve, what do you do with a child that's misbehaving and disrupting other pupils?
Yes. So obviously, yes. So I'll be, yeah.
Okay, well, generally, I mean, obviously you do have to do something as a teacher then to stop that from happening. Otherwise the others can't learn, and the child, him or herself, can't learn. But what I would say is that rather than following a sort of system that you could apply, is to always have in mind, or kind of work out of a relationship that you have with the child, as in you get the child's attention, you get them to look at you, you find a way of relating to them and making them realize, look, what you're doing isn't helping right now. And sometimes that's already enough, or just a look can sometimes be enough if you have that relationship. If it's not as straightforward as that, then you know, I mean, I'm never, you know, sitting or overwhelmed with the space they are in, as in maybe the classroom is too noisy and they just can't manage, and maybe a quieter environment would actually help them to calm down or settle a bit, and then when they're ready, they come back. But it's then the question of how do you send them away to do whatever they need to do? Is it done in a you are disrupting, you need to leave kind of way, or is it in a sort of, is it done in a way that the child feels like this is happening for their benefit, for their well-being, like it, you know, saying it looks like you really need to have some time to settle down, or even to give the child an option. Would it help you to go to another place where you can have some peace and quiet for a bit?
And how, I mean, oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Are you being told asking too many questions?
Thank you very much, Lucia, for that presentation. I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about the encouraging behavior that you're urging on colleagues. you've described the many ways in which praise and punishment can be unhelpful in the classroom, but you mentioned rather likely, I thought, the question of how to encourage. Have you got an example of good effects of encouragement in the classroom?
I think like saying something, rather than saying something that has a judgment attached to it, it's saying something or just expressing the joy, as in it needs to really come from a true, from an honest place, kind of, and to maybe just exclaim, well, you did it in a joyful kind of way that really expresses that you are really pleased. Doesn't have a judgment, it just states you did it, and that in itself is just achievement enough, isn't it? I mean, in the class, and I mean, this might fit better for little things like, I don't know, if you imagine a young child does something for the first time and you're really proud, or you really want to say, wow, well done, or something, instead of saying well done or good girl or good job or something like that, you just exclaiming you did it is a sort of judgment-free, happy expression. And in the classroom, I think, for example, I don't know, I mean, if looking at children's work or children's paintings or drawings is maybe to not to judge whether this one's good and this one's nicer and this one's whatever, but to really look at the details. For example, looking at which painting has a really bright red or can look really and shining brightly, or which picture has achieved a certain thing that maybe was a task at the beginning, or even if it wasn't the task, to just wake up the children's observations to discover different things. Even maybe in a painting that initially looks quite messy or something, you can usually find something really beautiful in it somewhere. I don't know if this is the kind of thing you were thinking of.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all again for coming, and a special thank you to Lucia. It really was very enlightening, and I'm sure one session isn't enough to really explore the depths of this work that you have carried out and that you are bringing into your classroom every day. So thank you once again, Lucia, and thank you to everybody for coming to our talks. We have a little break now, and we'll start again the season of the autumn talks